Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Doctor. It's a wet and wild day up here in the Pacific Northwest. We have thunderstorms right now. If you're hearing that in the background, we've got windstorms. We've got it all tonight. So I hope wherever you guys are at right now, the weather is just a little bit nicer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming gunning meta, so that's going to involve Frederica and Lucia. A lot of the times it does include an Engelbert in the formation, but you never know when a sneak attack Ryu is going to show up, so we're going to talk about the things you can do to easily counter the gunner meta to give you that little extra edge over these two powerful gunning women. Now, of course, the first thing you're going to need to understand is the elemental wheel. Of course, if you're going to be going up against Frederica and Lucia, you're going to be going up against wind and lightning, so you're not going to be wanting to have earth and water characters. Likewise, you're going to be wanting to use the counter element to them. Unfortunately, earth is countered to lightning, so no matter what, earth units are always going to get owned by Lucia, even if Frederica resists them. So we're going to be looking a lot at ice units as potential units for your build, and we're going to be looking at other units with innate missile resistance to help you take less damage from their ranged attacks. Units that this is primarily going to affect is all of the tanks. We're going to look at Mont in particular because he is particularly bad at fighting Lucia. We're going to take a look at Nasha, who I'm actually shifting my meta comp to. I actually believe Nasha is going to be a superior tank in this situation than Mont. And we're going to be taking a look at Thancred, Gilgamesh, Whisper, probably the best tank right now coming up into this gunning meta. Sarab has some missile resistance. Engelbert, the second best tank. Of course, Ketona is going to have to be addressed, and Shadow Lynx as well. We're going to go ahead and break it down, you guys. So I do have these stats with easily accessible units. So if you have Ifrit, I'm assuming that you're going to get plus 15 piercing attack resistance. And if you have Cleansing the Mind maxed out, which should be relatively easy, it is a MR card. And if you've been pulling from the beginning, you probably have it by now. That's going to offer you another plus 15 missile resistance. So all of these stats are with the assumption that you have plus 30% missile resistance already on these characters from those two cards, or from that one card and that one Esper in your formation. So of course, Whisper is going to be at the top of the list with 60% resistance to missile attacks for Lucia and Frederica. Engelbert is going to be the second highest at 50% resistance to Lucia and Frederica. And then Nasha is going to be the third highest at 50% resistance to Lucia and 35% resistance to Frederica. Nasha always has that bonus as well, that she's an ice element against Frederica, so she is going to deal that little bit of extra damage on her ice element attacks against her. So that is a nice bonus as well that both Whisper and Engelbert don't have. Mont is where the pain really starts showing up here, though. Mont has an innate resistance, negative 10% to wind attacks, and Lucia not only is a wind unit, she gets plus 15% earth killer. So any attacks coming from Lucia are going to be dealing plus 25% damage to Mont. Not only that, Mont actually has minus 10% missile resistance. So even with Cleansing the Mind, even with Ifrit, he only has 20% missile resistance, meaning he's going to take 5% total damage more from Lucia, but he is going to resist 40% of Frederica's damage. I still don't think that's a good case situation. When you look at the mitigation that any of the other tanks have, that's going to be a lot of damage going on Mont from Lucia. Now for Ketone, Ketone is in the same situation here. She will take 25% enhanced damage from Lucia. Ketone, though, has an innate or no innate missile resistance down. So Ketone is going to have only 5% resistance against Lucia and 50% resistance against Frederica. This can actually be to your advantage because Frederica does not, Lucia does not always have Sub-Hunter. There's kind of two sub-options for Lucia. There's a Sub-Hunter, which grants access to Sharp Shot, which is the guaranteed hit. And then there's the Sub-Double Gunner, which, yes, it has high accuracy, but it doesn't have the guaranteed hit attack. So Ketone could actually be completely viable against a Frederica and Lucia team like this, if the Lucia is not sub hunter. So you're gonna have to be checking Lucia's subs if you are planning on using a ketone evasion build. Now, Shadowlynx, in a similar situation, Shadowlynx does have 15% resistance to missile damage across the board with Ifrit and Cleansing the Mind. That's because Shadowlynx actually has negative 15% innate missile resistance. So, unfortunately, Shadowlynx was not built to fight these units. But at the end, if you do have those two cards, she is going to have 15% resistance to Lucia and 15% resistance to Frederica. If you are going up against a Frederica sub hunter and you have to have an evasion tank and you have Shadowlynx and Ketone, it might actually be worth it to have Shadowlynx be your tank. Something to think about there, you guys. Now, taking a look at the DPS units that we have, Gilgamesh is a 100% super viable unit. He's going to have 20% resistance to wind naturally. He has 5% piercing resistance naturally, leaving him at plus 55% resistance and damage to Lucia and 35% resistance and damage to Frederica. Sir Rob, of course, also has 15% missile resistance, putting him at plus 45% with Ifrit and Cleansing the Mind for Lucia and Frederica. Thancred, very powerful. He has a passive 20% missile resistance. You could potentially maybe make Thancred even your tank if you put Vow of Love on him and really focus on making sure you get that 50% missile resistance. There's a couple other options for missile resistance here that we'll be talking about as well. Victoria, when she comes out in the upcoming banner after Lucia, is the strongest Lucia killer that we are going to have in the game. The reason for that is Victoria has plus 20% wind resistance. She also has ice element, so she deals extra damage to wind element users. And she gets a passive 20% resistance to missile damage, which with Cleansing the Mind and with Ifrit is going to put her at plus 70% damage mitigation from Lucia and plus 50% from Frederica. Of course, even further down the line, we do have Agrius coming out with a natural plus 20% wind resistance and no piercing resistance, actually, or missile resistance, excuse me. So she'll have a plus 50% resistance to Lucia and plus 30% resistance to Frederica. And then, of course, we have the different armor options. So if you have the Gold Helm plus 5, that's going to be plus 8%. The Mithril Helm plus 5 is going to be plus 7%. The Iron Helm plus 5, very viable, plus 6% missile resistance. Might be worth it if you find yourself going up against these missile comps quite frequently. If you have Valide's TMR, it also gives plus 5% resistance to all attack types. If you have Odin, you guys, so this is kind of where it gets a little crazy. If you have Odin, in addition to Cleansing the Mind, that's an additional plus 20% resistance to most physical attacks from ranged users, because most physical attacks from ranged users are single attack. Of course, Lucia does have quadruple attack, but I have a feeling she's not going to be using that often. So if you pair Odin with Cleansing the Mind, if you do have your Odin at a high level, you're just basically adding that resistance on top of what else you're resisting. Going to make you very powerful. And finally, of course, we have Whisper's TMR, which will add 5% resistance if you do have access to that, making yourself quite tanky against the missile attack builds that are out there. Now, taking a look at Lucia herself and what you can expect from her, she does have access to Raz Algethi, which is going to be accuracy plus 10. She has access to a Vega plus 5, which is going to be accuracy plus 22. The Moonless Gun from Ryryu is going to give attack 82, evasion 13, and HP 102 with an additional effect blind. You're probably only going to see her with an aim Vega and an aim Raz Algethi. If you ever see an assault Raz Algethi on her, that's kind of your clue that you should be going in with an evasion build. Another clue that you should be going in with an evasion build against her is if she's sub dual gunner and not subbed ranger. So the only way she has access to that sharpshoot capability is if she is sub job ranger, you guys. I think a lot of people are going to be subbing dual gunner on her though for the evasion plus 30 and defense plus 20 for 3 turns. I think smokescreen is a very powerful ability and I would rather have that than sharpshoot. So I think she could potentially be just a little bit susceptible to evasion builds if you do have it. One of the things you have to watch out for too, if you have a lot of melee units, is the capability of her to use horizontal shot, So you can see here in the lower left-hand corner, horizontal shot is an AoE, point-blank, shotgun-style technique, which affects a huge quantity of squares in front of her. Something to think about there. And another thing to talk about Lucia is she might be getting nerfed. So her ability tune-up in the JP version had a 40% defense penetration associated with it, but in NA so far, all we've seen is increased missile attack 10 to 40, so it's possible she may be getting nerfed and we may actually have even an easier time against her. The moral of the story with Lucia really is, though, when you're in arena, when you're going up against her, look at your opponent's equipment, look at Lucia's sub job, and make sure she's either sub ranger or dual gunner, and make your attack based around that information. Now let's talk about Espers, you guys, because Espers add a whole nother layer of complication onto this. Your missile attack resistance Espers are going to be Ifrit and Odin. Each of them offer 15% missile resistance. Odin offers it at 207 SP, and Ifrit offers it at 241. That's if you want to pick up that additional 40 SP for that attack plus 7%. Basically, you have to get them both to 2-star level 39 if you want to get that missile resistance plus 15%. I know a lot of people out there are like, you're crazy, why would I do that? I'm just trying to help you guys out. If you are fighting the gunner builds, I understand a man killer is probably very desirable, but if you're anything like me, I do have my Ifrit spec towards missile resistance, so that might be a very viable Esper to put on your tank. Shiva is also going to give 10% wind resistance. Siren is going to have 10% weakness to lightning, so watch out for that one. Golem likewise is going to have 10% resistance to lightning, or on the other side of that. Cactar is going to have 15% wind weakness, so you do need to be aware of that one. Tetrasylphid, you guys, does have a wind resistance path, so if you are focused on countering Lucia, Tetrasylphid is very powerful at wind 25 resistance at only 170 SP, which is level 30 2-star. Not only that, you can get additional evasion nodes with her, so very powerful. I could see this being put on a ninja to balance out that evasion build. So definitely something to think about. If you don't have Tetrasylphid or you're not planning on getting Tetrasylphid, you definitely should. And then, of course, on the banner after we get Lucia, we're going to get Ochu. And Ochu has lightning resistance and wind resistance. And at level 69 2-star, which is quite high, he does have 20% lightning resistance and 10% wind resistance. I do recognize this is a lot of SP to invest in an Esper, but you could just go for lightning resistance and lightning killer, for example. You could scoop up magic plus and make it a really powerful magic Esper because it really balances out on the counter of the elements. Something to think about there, you guys. Do remember we are going to be getting a Magicite event coming up sometime in the next month, so you are going to be able to think about what Espers you want to build a little bit more seriously. Now, finally, for the cards that we talked about, Cleansing the Mind, of course, with shooting attack resistance plus 15, luck plus 15% for the single unit, and then Odin with the Maneater plus 10% for the single unit, and resistance to single attack plus 20. Number one, these are the two most important cards to be carrying. There is a Mobius card that comes out in the future with shooting attack resistance plus 20, but seeing as Mobius doesn't exist anymore, I don't think we'll be seeing that card. Alright, you guys, we are at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching all of this way. Make sure you come check me out on stream tonight. We are going to be streaming from 8 p.m. Pacific until reset time, so make sure you come and say hello. And if you are looking at buying any Visior using Amazon coins, make sure you use my Amazon coin affiliate link down below. And finally, make sure you come check us out on Discord. If you feel like dropping a comment in YouTube, it means a lot to me. I do try my hardest to reply to all of them, and I just love hearing from you guys. So thank you so much, you guys. I hope wherever you're at, it's more beautiful than it is here, and have a great rest of your day.